Well, hello there, and welcome to another episode of The Working Ant with me, your host and coach, Rami Balut. I hope you're doing well. I hope you are in good spirits, and I hope overall you're just in good health. It's an absolute pleasure to be with you today. Um, it's a really, really nice day in the Bay. What can I say? The weather has been lovely. The sun is shining. The weather is sweet. And how about that for a transition of seasons once and for all here in California? But, way things are going, who knows? We may have another thunder, lightning, rain, atmospheric river type of storm next week. I have no idea. I'm up for anything. But I can tell you one thing, my expectations, which is my topic of conversation for us today, have definitely been modified after an experience like this. And that is precisely why our conversation of today is our idea around expectations, managing our expectations, and most importantly for today, expressing our expectations. And when I talk about expressing our expectations, I mean the expression of ourselves in our pursuit of expectations, which is exceptionally important because, so many times, for so many reasons, we have a level of expectation of ourselves that, may very, very much enliven us and allow us to pursue some really important goals. And then maybe actually expectations that weigh us down and make us feel as if we are inept in some ways, and our self-efficacy gets affected by it. And some may not, be aware of how our expectations are actually having an effect on us. The reality is, of course, that we take a look at our expectations of life and we look at where we are at today. There's a certain level of emotional association that goes with that level of expectation. And that emotional association is very much manifested in how it is that we express ourselves through our level of expectation. So if you've been feeling, over the course of this half year that, 2023 may be the year for me, then that is absolutely wonderful. At least think through sort of how that's making you feel. I can guarantee you that you'll be probably more in a position of happiness in pursuit of those expectations versus those expectations adding a level of, anxiety or weighing you down. And for others, some of us may be thinking to ourselves, like, you know what, 2023 is like halfway there, and I'm nowhere near accomplishing the things that I have set out for myself. And so, am I happy pursuing those expectations of myself? Not so sure, because if I actually don't meet that level of expectation, I'm setting myself up for feeling in a way that's sort of adverse to how I ideally would like to feel. Either which way you look at it, I think this is a really, really good time to reassess the expectations you have of yourself. After all, we're 6 months almost into this year, and it's a good time to say to yourself, like, hey, you know what? What were my expectations for myself this year? Am I on track with those expectations? Are those expectations very much like realistic to where I'm at right now? Because, there's so many factors that influence, our level of expectations. We can go back to the origins of where we were at a very, very young age, influenced by our families, our parents in particular, our culture associations, our religious associations, our social associations growing up. And it could be all the way through, like where we're at today. And in between, there's a lot of interactions we had with people in a proximity where we say, hey, you know what? That's the kind of expectation I should have of myself. I've amassed this sort of recognition or title or wealth or learning or growth or relationships that have allowed me to feel a level of expectation that, is commensurate with who I believe I am. And there are others, that don't actually feel this way, and that's okay. And that's totally fine. I think if anything, what's so important is just for you to be yourself. After all, here is who's really the gauge of this level of expectation for yourself. Well, it's you. Nobody else but you sets these expectations for yourself. And so, in my humble opinion, as your proud host and coach here, I think expectations should be expressed in a way that carry us, expressed in a way that, anchor us positively versus being like an anchor that pulls us down on the ship, through this journey of life we are navigating through. And despite all the icebergs along the way, expectations should be things that actually create a level of joy and harmony for ourselves in our lives. Having an expectation for ourselves is just mainly a mountain of principles and values that we continue to pursue. And you know what? In many cases, especially in today's day of age, we are in this assault of the future. And today, for whatever reason, in this present moment, is just certainly not enough. It's almost ignored. It's almost ignored, where it should be, in fact, captured and felt and reflected upon. In fact, we continue to pursue the future in such an aggressive way that we almost lose track of the expectations we have for ourselves. And expectations seem to be like a byproduct of the direction we're actually heading, rather than it being a primary purpose of responsibility for ourselves. And I'm just, wanting to remind you of the importance of setting those expectations and being able to express those expectations. What do I mean by expressing expectations? Well, there's the obvious, and that is expressing those expectations to people at work that could actually influence, the ability or capability of you to even achieve those expectations. People that could champion and advocate for you. I would hope that's your manager or your skip level. If anything, at minimum, it should be your peer outside of yourself, of course. But, someone you could express those expectations to that could actually, have a level of impact on whether or not they are achieved, that they are recognized, and that you are rewarded for those expectations of yourself. And maybe at times like these where, you're working on a project that has a much smaller level of success, but nevertheless, the expectations of yourself are for you to do your best work, to make a difference, to make an impact with the resources that you've been given, with the limited time, with a large portfolio, and yet you are still able to achieve something that is worthy enough of praise and celebration, irrespective of its outcome, because intentions matter. And so when we talk about expressing ourselves, yeah, we can talk about it in the realm of like expressing it to other people. But how do you express, expectations to yourself? How do those expectations make you feel? Why are those expectations there? What is the, means, to the end of fulfilling those expectations? And if you actually were to achieve those expectations, let's just say it's through a promotion or through a raise of total, compensation, what would it actually mean to you then? What happens next? And so it's not to say that I want you to think through far and beyond your ability to achieve those expectations. I actually want you to be very, very realistic with those expectations. Yeah, are they actually achievable? That goes back to you. That goes back to your level of self-efficacy. After all, you know yourself best. I will never pretend to know you more than you know yourself, nor should anyone else, by the way, pretend to know you more than you know yourself. But, it's actually important to know, like, hey, what are you doing all this for? What is that why for you? And how does that why actually align with the level of motivation you have to pursue this level of expectation that you have for yourself? Because those two things combined can be a powerful force. And when they're not combined well, they could be detrimental to your overall career growth, even, your personal relationships, and I would say that, when we have a strong level of expectation of ourselves, we typically have strong values and strong principles we can follow and anchor off on. But I think it's really, really important at minimum to think through, expectations and what they actually mean to you. Because when we think about like creating these expectations for ourselves, at minimum, you want to actually ask yourself like, hey, why this expectation and why not another? Or at minimum, even ask yourself like, hey, are these expectations of myself making me contract in some way? Am I feeling like, oh my gosh, I have these expectations, but I really don't want to engage with these expectations? Are they making you feel, fluid in nature? Are they making you feel like a sense of joy and a love for them? Are you happy in pursuit of those expectations, or are they actually making you feel otherwise? These are all really, really good questions to ask yourself as you're pursuing an expectation of yourself now or in the future. I think the people that you're surrounding yourself with have a lot to do on, some sort of checks and balances over those expectations. You being able to, understand, how your expectations are related to other people's expectations of you, because that stuff matters as well. Maybe less so, but, very, very, very powerful Nevertheless, right, if you have an expectation that a spouse, a loved one, a manager, a peer, a skip level has of you, well, then you obviously want to meet those expectations at minimum. Be very, very clear on how expectations are driving yourself in your life. Be very, very clear on how they're impacting your overall day to day, your wellness, your self efficacy, your ability to feel good about your pursuit of them. When we talk about expectations for ourselves, some of our expectations could be very, very far fetched. They could be outlandish at times, like in nature, when we explain them to other people. It doesn't really matter unless you feel good about them yourself. But at minimum, make sure you write down those levels of expectations. Make sure you revisit those levels of expectations. And perhaps you may want to consider pursuing an emotion that is associated with those levels of expectation. Oftentimes, I'll have a lot of clients of mine that'll say, Rami, I want to achieve this particular goal. I want to grow in my career. I want to nail my next interview. I want to be in a position of power and authority. I want to add as much value as I possibly can in the short amount of time I may be in this certain position before I move on to my next play. And that's absolutely wonderful. But you may want to think through, the emotions associated with that. And what I mean by that is as follows. If you were to achieve the level of expectations you've set forth for yourself, how would that make you feel? Joyful, I'm hoping. What kind of joy? Is it like an excited kind of joy? Is it like a fulfilling kind of joy? Is it a kickback, drink a margarita at the beach kind of joy? What kind of emotion is associated with you achieving that level of expectation? Consider pursuing that emotion, not just the actual event. So I'm one to believe that, when we actually have a more joyful pursuit, a more satisfactory pursuit of that expectation, and we sort of channel that emotion into our day to day, we're actually enhancing and amplifying our ability to achieve that expectation. And at times, we get caught up in this because it's like, okay, Rami, coach, I've got an expectation for myself. It's associated with this particular event, and this particular event alone is going to make me feel this level of emotion. Well, I actually would argue and say, you know what? Why don't you consider harnessing that emotion today and using that emotion to achieve your expectation? What would happen then? How much more expressive would you actually be in your expectation? And if you're watching me on video right now, I'm literally like all smiles here, because when you think about how hard one actually is in pursuit of the expectations that they've set forth upon themselves, would it be nice to actually associate such a positive emotion to it? What would be wrong with that? Consider it as you're in pursuit of your expectations. Consider the fact that, hey, you know what? You don't have to just suffer and sacrifice and go through, and burn through the midnight oil over and over and over again, time and time and time again, without a level of feeling of some satisfactory emotion that's associated with your pursuit of these expectations of yourself. And if we can actually get to that level, well, we're doing some of these things that can support and amplify these levels of expectations for ourselves, well then, amazing. We've actually done something so well for ourselves. Remember, when you're setting expectations for yourself, as serious as they may be, they've got to be fun along the way. Because if you're not actually able to enjoy them, then we're going to continue pursuing a future that is otherwise already here. And in essence, when you achieve something, you would have achieved something that's already there. Always was there. Always was there for your taking. And so might as well harness the emotional association to that now so you can better yourself as you pursue that outcome. And that's all I've got today on the Working At. I hope you're doing well. It's been very, very nice weather-wise here, and at least in Northern California. We continue to experience a very challenging, macroeconomic climate. It's not easy. It's not easy being in a time like this, but I'm always, always, always looking at the silver linings, looking at the opportunities, letting things play out the way they were intended, and being able to keep on these optics of opportunity along the way where we make the most out of what it is that we have today. Being resourceful, being able to nourish these precious relationships that we've actually built. Not to shun and shut people out, but engage with people and engage and interact with life as we see it. And you know what? If, you feel like, you're in a position where, hey, this ain't cut for me and this is not the life that I intended to live, hey, that's a good thing too. And the reason why it's a good thing is because it actually opens up your perspective to things that are beyond just that. And you can start anywhere at any time to do anything that you would like to pursue. That's the beauty of, our ability to have a level of personal freedom. And for those of you that feel like, hey, you know what, I've just got to get through this for better times, hey, I get you too. And there are many of you that have reached out to me that have been impacted and affected in some particular adverse way. Hey, you know what? I think the world and the universe is testing us to be in this exact moment at this exact time and do our utmost best to make the most out of it. You've got to believe that. There's the should, there's the could, and then there's the must. There's what's convenient, and then there's what's actually good for you. Try to measure yourself in between that and understand that, hey, you know what? With everything that I've amassed along the way, here you are, healthy, beautiful brain. You've got so much going for you. And you know what? Life will work in your favor so long as you look at it that way. And that is a decision for you and you alone to make. And that's all I got. I'll see you next week. Take care and be safe. And thank you for watching or listening. Take care for now. Bye.